If you want to see your name at the beginning of all of our videos, as well as see exclusive content here on the homestead, please feel free to join our Patreon. Memberships start off at just $1 a month. And as always, thank you for your support.
When it comes down to our contracts, there are a few points that we hit. For one, we have you sign to ensure that you confirm that you have a healthy animal and that there are no problems, and that if a problem were to arise in the first 48 hours, you would bring the animal back for a full refund or to trade it out for another rabbit, and that the rabbit is appropriately sexed, meaning that you agree that it is dictated male or female dependent on what you're going to buy. There's also commentary on there about how there is no guarantee that this rabbit will produce or produce any winners or winnings for yourself, that the pedigree is correct and complete to my full knowledge, and that if for whatever reason you no longer want or can have the animal, I have first buyback rights, or the animal comes back to me depending on circumstance. Just the generalities of everything. I kind of tweak it or move it around dependent on the animal and the sale. I have talked many a times about how it costs just as much to feed a great rabbit compared to a mediocre rabbit. And I had way too many bucks. So my husband helped me to butcher out some today. Not Moose, I promise. Moose is still here being annoying. But I figured we can do some math to kind of show how much it was costing to feed these guys, just keeping them around as mediocre bucks. Each of these bucks were about 10 pounds. And on average, we feed 1 ounce of pellet per pound per rabbit per day. So each of these guys were eating about 300 ounces of pellet in a month, meaning that between the two of them, they were eating 600 ounces of pellet per month. Doing a little quick math, that's about 37.5 pounds of feed per month for those 2 bucks. So between the two, they're eating about 3/4 of a bag per month. And that's feed I can be putting into my other bucks or my other rabbits that are more beneficial to my program. So that's just something to keep in mind and some quick math when you think you have too many rabbits or you're having trouble keeping up with the feed bills every month.
This is the only hen that I'm looking at butchering out tonight with my extra roosters. As you can see, she's holding her head a bit funny. And there are a couple of things that this could be. This could be something neurological, or it can be something called wry neck. So a few days ago, I pulled her out of her pen with her pen mates, and I put her into isolation. I've been giving her vitamin E to see if I could treat it for wry neck, and the condition's only been getting worse. So more than anything, it's probably not wry neck, it's probably something neurological. And it's just better to cull this animal out than to let it suffer. If she's in the big pen with all of the rest of the animals, she's not eating, she's not drinking, and she's getting picked on by the other hens. And she's still not getting better in isolation, so I just don't want to let her suffer. And to just kind of give you an idea, this is what she's doing when she is on the ground to her own devices. It's not often that we see something like this in raising quail, but when we do, we don't want the animals to suffer if it's not something that can be fixed. So I'm going to go ahead and call her, and I'm going to open her up and see if there's something wrong internally with her. Well, that's super inflammatory. But hey, let's talk about it. For one, it's not about how a rabbit looks that makes me cull it. If that were the case, I would have eaten my Californians from the beginning, because I think red-eyed whites are quite creepy. I cull a rabbit from most cases in the beginning because it doesn't meet the standard of perfection, meaning its type is incorrect. So when we pose a rabbit up of a commercial type, they have to look a certain way. And that is because the way they look dictates how much meat yield they hold. Because I do raise meat rabbits, we raise them to eat them, that's their purpose. Beyond that, I could also call out a rabbit because it has improper markings.
or they have the wrong toenail color, because those things would get me disqualified on a table at competition, and it's something I wouldn't want to perpetuate through my line. But the rabbits I'm calling out for these reasons aren't babies. They are mature rabbits, and it's what's called a fryer weight. At that point, they are at least 5 pounds, and they're perfect for eating without extra preparation. If you wait for too long to get them to get to an adult weight, like a senior weight, past a year old, or in the case of my lines, normally around 6 to 7 months, you have what's called a stewer. And that stewer requires extra preparation to make sure that the meat is correctly tenderized and more edible. You see a lot of them called soup rabbits. But I'm not just going to call out a baby rabbit. That would be a waste of resources. And one of the main reasons I raise meat rabbits is because they are an extremely sustainable resource when it comes to raising meat. You don't have to like what I'm doing, that's okay. But at least get the facts straight. I mean, come on. Let's talk about vet visits. Here on the homestead, we raise poultry classified animals. That means our chickens, our ducks, our quail, our guinea fowl, and our rabbits. Because somebody classifies rabbit under poultry. Little weird, but go with me here. Our nearest vet is about an hour away, and they send someone out about twice a year to do general health checks, shots, updates, that kind of thing. And if we're having a really bad year, they will come out for emergency visits like they did when we lost Mushu. But one of the biggest reasons we do not go to the vet is we have most things here to take care of the animals. I have a huge first aid kit full of all kinds of lovely things. I have all of the basic supplies to take care of most illnesses and injuries, including antibiotics, both injectable, topical. Sometimes we have oral, but I prefer the injectable or topicals. We have various kinds of steroids. I do all of our deworming here, all kinds of things. So we take care of our vet care for the most part. And if something is bad enough to where we can't take care of it, odds are it isn't worth trying to push to save. So this comment is in reference to a quail hen that I had. She has what looks like wryneck or something neurological. So we go through our normal steps. We go through isolation, we give vitamin E, we give selenium, antibiotics just in case it's something along the lines of that. We put her into ISO, it doesn't get better, it gets worse. That single quail's hen is worth $15. And as hard as this can be to some people, that is what she is worth in a breeding program. These are not pets. The quail are food, the rabbits are food. We care for them and do what we can, but at what point do we say enough is enough? And my answer to that is when they've gone past their value, or when their quality of life is going to be so bad it is not worth it to the animal. And that is whichever comes first. That quail hen was not having a great time. She couldn't really eat, she couldn't really drink, we were doing things by syringe. I will not let one of my animals suffer for my vanity. And I'm also not going to drive more than an hour to go to the vet, nor I'm going to have a vet come here for a $200 emergency fee for a $15 quail. And that's just how it is when you raise animals. Now, if it was a cow or a goat or a pig or something larger of scale that we weren't able to take care of, then yes, I would call the vet. But I won't call the vet for chickens and rabbits. This is an amazing inquiry when it comes to breeding rabbits, in that if you have a pairing that gives undesirable kits, would you want to stop breeding it? And it's a little more complicated than that. When it comes to breeding rabbits, sometimes you will breed together really crappy rabbits and get a grand champion out of them. Other times you will breed grand champions together and have an entire litter of culls. Sometimes the lines don't mesh well. Sometimes the rabbits don't mesh well. And then other times, they just don't mesh well for that single breeding and they're fine in another breeding. What I typically do is I will take a pairing and breed them. If they produce a less than desirable litter, then I might try again just to see if it was just bad luck.
If they have another bad litter, I will pair them with other rabbits and see if it was the pairing itself or the rabbits that's throwing undesirables. And the reason why I can breed together less desirable stock to test breed them is because those kits just end up being food for the homestead. And because of the quick turnaround in breedings, being that a doe is only pregnant for about 30 days, and we wean those babies at 8 weeks, we have a very cushy window for mistakes. When it comes to my current pairings, for the most part, I get absolutely stunning rabbits in our litters. I will get at least 2 to 3 absolutely gorgeous babies out of a litter of 10. And then I'll get quite a few mediocre stock. Things that I would dictate as brood quality that might do well for somebody else's program, but not for my current program. And then in a litter, I might get 1 or 2 really bad typed babies. For me, I only need to keep about 1, if any, of the kits out of a litter. The rest go to sustaining our homestead, feeding us and our dogs. So if I'm only getting 1 or 2 spectacular animals for show, that's fine with me. But I also don't focus on selling those animals either. If I was focused on selling more animals, then maybe I would want to do pairings that were more spectacular. But currently I'm working on granding this little Sheila and her sister, and all of my openings when it comes to my mini Rextos are currently filled. So I can play with my pairings a bit more right now and test things out that might be less desirable for other qualities that I really like. So when we're talking about scents, there's a lot that kind of goes into a breeding program, and what I do may not work for another breeder. I always appreciate when somebody brings something like this up, because not everyone knows about certain diseases, including myself, or maybe they don't think about these certain diseases when going through the disease process. And to be honest, I didn't think about mentioning it in the video because I had already crossed it out of my mind. But again, I really do appreciate it. So let's talk about why it isn't Newcastle disease. For one, when it comes down to the rest of my hens, they are acting completely normal. So we're not seeing a contagious spread from patient 0 through the rest. And with something like Newcastle's disease, that is a very, very common thing. We're also not seeing respiratory distress. We're not seeing vomiting or drooling. And we're not seeing a decrease in egg laying, nor are we seeing a change in fecal matter. So our fecal matter is the same normal color. It's not diarrhea and it's not green. So I did think about all of this and kind of pushed it past my mind, which is why we initially treated for Rhineck. And then also when I did open the hen up, we didn't have any kind of lesions or internal damage that we would see with Newcastle's disease. So if anyone was hanging around for the necropsy of that hen, there really wasn't anything. I won't post pictures here to my TikTok because TikTok is very sensitive about those kind of pictures. But I will be posting the necropsy photos on my Facebook page on the Itty Bitty Homestead Committee Collective. And if anyone sees my nasty little silver hen, this is my silver cage and they are mean. But yes, it doesn't look like Newcastle's, and I'm very grateful for, I think there were 3 or 4 different people commenting it. We're good on that end. When it comes to my silver fox, I don't wait for them to be fully silvered before I send them off to freezer camp. I can kind of tell by about 10 weeks whether or not they're going to have a good, even silvering, just by how the silvering is coming in on the pelt. What's more important to me overall is body structure and the type of the rabbit that is in front of me. Then we'll look at fur type, make sure it's standing, that it's thick, that it has good grip, and then that silver quality comes last. I would rather keep an animal with great type and fur compared to an animal that has amazing silvering, crappy fur, and crappy type. Because out of all of those things, the silvering is easier to fix down the line.
I saved this post right here from an instance of everyone thinks that Californians and New Zealanders are the traditional meat rabbit. But there are a whole lot more meat rabbits than just those two. They are just the prime commercial types. Meaning that's what you normally see in a farm that specifically focuses on rabbit meat. But there are a crap ton more. For instance, most rabbits that sit at about 10 pounds with a commercial body type would be considered as meat rabbits. That includes Rex, that includes Silver Fox, that includes Palominos, Champagne d'Argents, Cream d'Argents, Bruins, Americans, and many, many more rabbits that are considered meat rabbits. Just because something is cute and fuzzy does not dictate that it is a pet breed. In fact, normally when we look at pet breeds, they're just very small breeds, such as our mini Rex and our Lops and that kind of thing. But when we come down to it, all rabbits are edible. I eat my mini Rex because the byproduct of show rabbits is meat rabbits. And at the end of the day, when you are raising rabbits to show, and you want to ensure that rabbits don't end up in the shelter, the best option in a lot of ways is the freezer to be consumed, be that for dogs or humans. And you don't need to agree with the process. That's completely okay. But many people who raise rabbits for show and meat will dictate them to be used as a sustainable source of food. And if that works for them, then it's perfectly fine. But on the comment where you're leaving this video, you are leaving it on silver foxes, which are a heritage meat breed. You're just seeing a very young silver foxes in that they look small. Alright, darling, you are the gift that keeps on giving. At least when it comes to ethical debates. So let's talk about logistics when it comes to raising animals. And this is everything. We're talking from rabbit all the way up to cows. When it comes to raising animals for any kind of product, if they cannot produce something, they will be the produce. And that's kind of punny, I know. But if I have a rabbit that is a doe that is consistently producing litters, and then at some point in time she is no longer producing litters, she is going to end up in the freezer. And it's one of those things where you don't necessarily need to agree with me on this standpoint. It is a common practice in agriculture. It is very normal to see animals that are brood animals, and when they no longer produce, they become something else. We actually see it a lot in the cow industry for dairy cows. They will produce babies, they will produce milk, and when they no longer can do those two things, they turn into hamburger. Just like right here, you mentioned that you don't see cows locked up in small cages when they're livestock. I hate to tell you this, darling, whether you don't agree with it or not. You need to reevaluate that, and you need to look at veal farms. You need to look at feedlots, and you need to look at other agricultural practices, because unfortunately it ain't all rainbows and butterflies. They are kept in small areas that aren't grown out fields. And that is for production purposes, yes, but that is also for the safety of those animals. So when we look at rabbits in what you call these small cages, these are very appropriate cages when it comes down to studies. When we look at cortisol studies, when we look at stress levels in the rabbit, these smaller cages are actually better for them. They are less stressed in these cages because it mimics a warren society. It mimics the systems that they live in when it comes to their wild counterparts, when it comes to the rabbits before domestication in the European rabbit. The last thing we want in our livestock is for them to be stressed. So we provide them these smaller cage systems to bring that stress level down. And it's quite the opposite of abuse in that it is recommended by the AG department. It's recommended by the AG education system through OSU and Texas A&M and others. Our racks for the Do More cage systems, of course we have the racks that come with the cages originally, yes. But we also have these wood rack systems, which were built by a friend. They're just your basic 2x4s that are put into the side of the barn to create these like really stable wood systems. So we've taken the cages off because we're scrubbing these down. These are going to turn into quail racks because we're moving everything around and getting our NPIP. So this barn is going to turn into our quail barn and needs a good scrub down. But if you look at this rack system, we have these 2x4s that are quite literally drilled into the wall of the barn. And they continue going down, down, down into the other side of the barn. And then they're just drilled together in these T-posts to create different rack systems. It's basic carpentry. I myself suck at it, which is why I had a friend do it for me. But they work really well and are cheaper than getting the metal rack system. I really hope y'all aren't getting sick of the baby silver fox content because we have some updates on some coats that I'm really excited to share. So for those who haven't been following me for very long, our goal in our Silver Fox program this year was to make better coat quality. Coat quality is the biggest thing we're working on in this generation. And I'm getting pretty excited for these babies. So as you can see, we have some adult coat coming in with our silvering. That coat is nice, it's long, it's getting some really nice depth to it. There's some good grip going on in the fur. It's not too soft compared to our previous generations. The silvering's still a little mottled, of course, because this is a baby. But where it is coming in, it is really nice and even. But very pretty for the age and very nice when it comes to the standing quality. I cannot wait to see how these guys finish out in the next few months.